Howdy folks, while we are doing the wait time for our hand sculptures, we need something to do. So we are going to be practicing drawing our own human hands. Now, some people say that drawing the human hand is one of the most difficult challenges you can take on as an artist. And the reason for that is because we know what hands should look like. So if they're just a little bit off, we can immediately tell. Another reason why hands are so hard to draw is because they have so many bones, muscles, tendons, and knuckles, and they can do so many different poses. So it's kind of hard to just draw a hand because it's always looking different. It's always in some weird pose. But we are going to put those challenges aside, and we are going to try our very best to draw our own hands. And before we do, we are going to drop our judgments at the door because many different artists have painted many different kinds of hands. Famous, genius, brilliant artists all draw and paint hands differently. Check it out. So, no matter what you end up with at the end of this drawing, it is yours. You need to love it, okay? So, like I said, leave your judgments at the door. Let's just try our best. Before we start this hand drawing, we're gonna take off any jewelry, rings especially, that we have on our non-dominant hand, and we are going to slide a plastic glove onto our hands. Then, grab up a Sharpie and draw a line at the base of your knuckles. Then, draw a curved line around the swoop of your thumb. Add a line at the wrist, and then a short vertical line on each one of your knuckles. Do the same thing with the thumb. The one thing I forgot is a line at the bottom of the thumb, and then your vertical lines for each knuckle. Next, we're going to draw horizontal side-to-side lines across each crease of the knuckles. And once that's done, we need to trace a few of the wrinkles in our palm. That's it for that side. Let's do the top of the hand, just in case you are drawing the top of the hand and not the bottom. We're going to start with a curved line at the base of the fingers again, and then we're going to draw lines that trace the bones in our hands. These are called metacarpal bones. You have one for each finger. Then we're going to repeat the short vertical lines for each one of our knuckles, and we're going to add a shape, as best as we can draw it, at the end of the finger for our nails. After that's finished, let's add horizontal side-to-side lines for the knuckle creases. Now, what we just did is really what every artist does in their brains when they draw something that is 3D. They take that three-dimensional object, like a hand, and they convert it into flat space. That means they turn something 3D into lines and shapes. That way they can reproduce what they see on the paper. So, we are going to get ready to draw our hand, and we are going to use the lines that we drew on the glove in order to help our brains convert the 3D hand into flat space so we can draw it on the paper. Now, it's really important before we start to draw to get your hand in a comfortable pose that you can stay in the whole time you're drawing, because the more you move, the lines on your glove are going to move, and then your picture won't be very accurate. So rest your hand on the table, or make sure that you can hold your hand pose for a very long time as we start to draw this hand. And once your hand is ready to go, you're going to go line by line and draw the lines that you see on the glove onto your paper. So I like to start at the bottom and draw that curved line for the wrist, and I'm going to make it the same length as the actual line on the glove. Moving up, I'm going to draw the swoop of the thumb. I'm going to measure where does that line end, right about there, and then move on to the next line going up. So right now, we're not adding any shadows. We're not adding any contour lines right now. We are just looking at those black lines that we put on our gloves with the Sharpie. This is literally going to give you a skeleton for your hand drawing. So I'm going knuckle by knuckle now, working my way up the thumb and just drawing the lines that I see. The contour lines are coming next. But first, let's start with lines. The lines will become shapes, and the shapes will become forms later when we start to add value, shadows, and highlights. Once you get up to the finger knuckles, what you're going to want to really look for are the angles of the lines. Watch out for those knuckle lines and that they are in the right direction at the right angle. Okay, I have drawn all the lines that I drew on the glove. And now it's time to add contour lines. This will be the outline of your hand, right? We have the skeleton, the structure of the hand. That was done with the lines, but now we need the shape of the hand. So around each one of these fingers that I created with lines, I'm gonna draw a contour. I took off my gloves so that I can see better, and I'm going to add the shape of the palm and the shape of each finger. And the shape of it is going to follow the direction of my skeleton, my line skeleton. Yay, my hand is growing, it's coming along. It started as lines and now I've got shapes. And what I'm going to do is erase those skeletor lines that I drew inside and get my hand ready for some value. Value is basically light and dark in a picture. You want both in order to make your hand look 3D. You want shadows, you want medium grounds, and you want highlights, bright white areas. And to do this, you're going to have to really look closely at your hand. And start with laying down the areas that have shadow on them. In order to start laying down some shadows, I'm mostly just gently rubbing the paper with the side of my pencil. And then later on, I'll add a deeper shadow, but for now, I'm basically just mapping it out. Where are the shadows on my hand? Where are the darkest spots? And that's where I'm adding the first round of shadows. Once you've got your first layer of shadows put down onto the paper, you are going to go back in again and add some deeper shadows. So we know where the shadows are generally, but do they get darker within the shadow? Do they get lighter? Do they need to be blended for a smooth transition into the highlights? We're going to take a closer look every time we go over our hand with more and more shadow. Because a picture is so much more interesting to look at when it has high contrast. When the dark areas are really, really dark and the light areas are really, really light, and there's a whole range of shading in between. This is something I've always struggled with as an artist, is shading and making sure that I have high contrast. So I'm so excited to see how you handle the shadows and the shading and the contrast, because to me it's very challenging, but I know you can do it. One idea to add even higher contrast is to go back into the picture and look for highlights instead of shadows, and use your eraser to erase those highlights and make them even brighter. I am so excited to see what you do with this hand drawing. I'm excited to see your little twists and creative spins that you have on this. And I'm excited for us to get some awesome practice in drawing one of the toughest things to draw ever in the world. So good luck to ya. Really pumped.